microphones on and ready?
Should it be on all the time?
Or do we just click them on when we
Either
talk?
way, just when you're talking is fine too.
Does anybody listen?
You need to stay here, I think.
So we'll call the meeting to order at 7:04, according to Apple.
That's the
And
gospel.
We will take roll. I
Pledge allegiance.
yes. Sorry.
It's all right. It's first time.
Yeah. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Commissioner Peth?
Present.
Commissioner Chafin?
Present?
Commissioner Levine?
Present.
And Chair Spencer?
Present.
You have a quorum.
Sorry, let me grab an agenda really fast. Are they over
Oh,
here?
right on the podium.
Little town in Connecticut, the first selectman started kneeling and all hell broke loose. I would never do that, but it was ready to hang her.
So, orders of the day. Do we have, that's just the,
Any changes to the agenda? Any? Oh, all right.
okay, oral communications. That's where we open it up to the public. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Nicole McCarty, and I'm
Oh.
actually the director at Oak Tree Children's Club, which is across the street from. I was asked to come and speak about crossing guard or just kind of.
Great.
We kind of see, I guess over the last year or so, things that I've seen change, I guess. I don't know what change per se would be the word, but I guess the biggest things that I've seen, last year the crossing guard was just inconsistent in his job, say, he just walk out without. Literally, I watched him walk out without looking either way, almost get hit himself without. So that changed. He is actually not the crossing guard this year. The issue this year would actually be this year's crossing guard does not actually show up. I have had to call Dave's Avenue. So I'm speaking of the crosswalk directly across from school, across from the church.
Where the
So
stop,
at
where the stop
circle
sign, where the stop sign is. Okay.
Yes, right at the circle driveway of the church. I actually sit in the circle driveway at 2:30 every afternoon. I sign our kids in, so I actually watch the traffic and the crosswalk. So in any given afternoon that he does not show up, I call the school and I say, I'll usually let her know, crossing guard. And I understand it's a liability issue for the school to allow an employee to come out and play crossing guard. So, but somebody has to cross students that are crossing the road. So I have played crossing guard on numerous occasions, unfortunately, which basically puts us down on staff for inside at Oak Tree as well. But with that said, I would say that, so that's been a major issue this year. Partly what's come up in recent weeks and why it's probably become more of an issue that I actually spoke with Megan in the most recent week was because, and actually I called the Los Gatos Police Department, was because myself and another adult, actually, we watched a motorcyclist. There was the crossing guard and about 10 students. Drivers run the stop sign on a regular. This particular day, the crossing guard and students and adults were in the crosswalk, and the motorcyclist approached the stop sign and proceeded to on his way through the crosswalk with the crossing guard in the crosswalk. We all watched and we looked up and we were like, what in the world did this really just happen? He proceeded on the way up the road. So on that Friday, I called the police department because I was like, I now can't no longer let this go on. So I called the police department. They reached back out to me on Monday and he said, we are aware of the situation with the crossing guard and the situation that's kind of been going on. We will kind of make it more of a police presence on 8th Avenue. I haven't really seen the police per se, but I'm not there in the mornings because we don't open until later, so I'm not there at 8 o'clock. But I am there at 2:30 and I haven't really seen them, but that doesn't mean they're around. They're not around. But then that next particular week, the crossing guard I know didn't show up in the morning and in the afternoon at least 2 days the next week. And I called the school at least 2 more times. And at that point then, I was put on to the
Safe Routes to School
Yes.
Executive Director.
Yes, for the school district. So that's when I was put in contact with her as well. So then we're trying to make a better way to kind of deal with what's kind of going on, because obviously it's not very safe of what's happening right now, because we don't have safe routes in essence for the students and adults in the morning and in the afternoon for the kids to cross the road. It basically is the main route for everybody, even though Poppy is where, I mean, obviously you've got 3 crossing guards that are crossing students down at Dave's and Poppy and at right there at the church, but for whatever reason, the church crossing guard isn't really showing up properly, unfortunately. He does a great job. He's very social. He's very friendly, but he's a college student, and I'm not sure what's happened. But again, it's not been a safe year, and I've had to play crossing guard, and I understand I've put myself in a liability by being out in the middle of the road, but unfortunately, someone needs to be out there crossing the students, and I can't let the students cross by themselves. I've been left to do it by myself.
Can you ask questions or make comments during this point?
You
Sorry.
can't make any decisions, but yes, you can
Okay.
make comments.
Okay. Because I was going to say there are 2 times a day when the crossing guard should be there, the morning and the afternoon.
Correct.
Because there's also the middle of the day when you have some kinders who come over.
Yes.
Approximately how many kids come over in the afternoon from the school to Oak Tree?
We have anywhere from 45 to 60.
Okay. And that's just going to your program. That's not just the other kids who are going home with their parents who
That's a good point.
That is just my students.
Those
That
are
is
unattended, potentially unattended 1st through 5th graders walking themselves across the street.
That is correct.
Okay.
That does not include the drivers, adults that are crossing because they're on days or parking in the church parking lot and crossing.
You guys, I'm so sorry. You escort the kindergartners, but for the 1st through 5th graders,
They are crossing on their own.
Who employs this crossing?
That I do not know,
School
which is
district.
why I call the school every
gotta
afternoon.
be
The
the school
crossing guard
district.
doesn't show up.
It seems like we need to
It's
find
the
out
school
the
district.
supervisor, and somebody should have a
Yeah.
chat with them to start with.
well, that's what I've been told because I'm on the safe routes as well. And this is where I would love for us to think about what we can do, because I've been told 2 things, that it's tied to the police department and the school district.
I've got
jointly.
a major issue. God bless you but I mean, my kids are alum of your school. I live on Poppy. They're in their 20s, but number one, the school district. If someone told you they're worried about the liability of their employees, there's moral liability on the part of the kid gets run over. I mean, that's kind of a silly argument. This is something that's crazy. I mean, the school district should be God bless you for managing it, but they should be managing that, in my opinion. They're responsible for the kids, more or less. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. I would really find out why the school district is. I remember when Susan Van Felton was the principal, goes back 5-6 years. She used to go out in that parking lot, and she was like the mother protector of all the kids, and she would just run the thing. I mean, it was very hands-on. There was no excuse, and maybe the principal doesn't need to do it, but someone needs to take ownership of that. I was also here when that Don Perry was the mayor when that stop sign was put on. Do you, because we're going to talk about the Dave's Avenue School, and I know you're not a traffic engineer, neither am I, but there was some talk in the plan, which we're going to talk about later, of having a flashing, it doesn't replace a guard. Do you have any sense whether a flashing LED traffic light would help at all? I mean, traffic sign around the sign. My other question is, and this might be hard, would be there are crosswalks. I always thought it might be too expensive, a crosswalk without actually embedded LEDs. I have no idea the cost benefit of it, but I'm just wondering your intuitive feel for it.
One of the biggest things that I see are the parents, and I've actually talked to the principal, and it was actually part of my discussion with Karen, and it's part of it is education and for parents and students, right? Because part of it is getting students to understand they need to walk when they leave school, but part of it is education for parents, specifically when they're leaving school, is the right-hand turn from school onto Dave's. When they're leaving school, the biggest problem that I see is that right-hand turn out of school onto Dave's Avenue. They want to leave school so quickly that they want to make that turn. So I don't know if a red flashing light, I have no idea if it's going to deter them or slow them down, but everybody's goal at the end of the school day is to get home or get wherever they're going. And I know that we're all in a hurry, right? Like we want to think we want to get somewhere, but at some point we have 60 kids, we've got 200 students. It's not just my kids.
Yeah.
It's a lot of kids that are leaving school, and I do think it is the safety of our kids. It's all, and parents, because on that day that motorcyclist went through that stop sign, we all, because there were like 4 of us adults that were standing there, and we all went. Somebody literally could have been hit that day, because we all watched it happen. And thankfully it was just a motorcyclist who probably looked and went, I can just speed through because nobody's right there. But when I stood in that crosswalk, I literally had to stand there and put my body there and stop a car from coming into the crosswalk, make a right-hand turn onto Dave's, and they just want to keep coming through. And I'm like, you can't come in here. You got kids. You got to actually stop.
Do you see cell phones and texting or maybe lattes being an issue? I mean, I'm serious, because I live on Poppy, and I see people on the phone, the kids are screaming in the back.
I would say in the last couple of years, because I've had to play I always say play crossing guard, just because it's fun to say, I guess. But I've played crossing guard in the past couple of years, not like I have this year at all. I've played it, I don't even know how many times this year. Honestly, I don't. But I would say that's not been an issue, because the school has worked really hard with education, with not allowing them, or trying to work really hard with parents not being on a cell phone in the drive-through lane. Okay, good. I would say that is, probably once they get onto Dave's, they may pull it out, but I would say when they get into that drive-through lane, there are big signs. I mean, they've got, the last couple of years,
Snyder. I think it was Mr. Snyder who got the signs.
They made big signs that you're not allowed to be on your phone. So I would say that is not.
How about I know you've got, I've lived in the neighborhood for 22 years, and you've got a older, you have a demographic in your church, good for you, of older parishioners. And sometimes they park on Dave's. Is that much of? I'm just curious. The kids obviously are a priority, but do you have issues with older parishioners maybe walking a little slower across the road, or dropping off on a Sunday morning when people want to go have their their brunch? Or I'm just kind of curious the non-school hours for your parishioners.
On Sundays?
Well, no. Even you have after-hours stuff all the time at the church. Sunday mornings.
They don't use the other side because we're down on numbers at church per se. They don't use the other side very often anymore.
Okay. Thank you.
But you've also been very accommodating to the school and let the school use your parking lot as overflow for major events.
Which is really great.
Yeah. That's a huge bonus because parking is at a premium.
Yes.
And the school parking lot.
I have a question. So when you play substitute crossing guard, do you have the sign out there? I mean, do you have the benefit of the tools that they have?
So this is a really good point. Unfortunately, no, I do not. I told myself all year I need to order myself a stop sign, but I have not, because I keep telling myself, the crossing guard is gonna show up and I'm not gonna need it.
Sure.
And I just have not, because I keep telling myself, I'm not gonna need it, and I just haven't. So unfortunately, no, I don't. So, but because I'm so, in essence, known by, I've been around for 20 years. I've worked at Oak Tree literally for 20 years. And I'm known enough around school, I've been around the school enough that parents know me. So when they, and now they see me, especially this year I played it enough times, that they know when I'm in the crosswalk, they know in essence, most of the parents will come out and go, oh, you're the crossing guard today. Yes, I am. So unfortunately, no, I do not.
Yeah, and I don't think you should have to buy a sign. I don't think you should have to be doing this. I think it's a whole nother issue, but I think I was wondering, so a lot of people know you, but do you think you have, or in your opinion, do you have the same effect as the crossing guard that has the sign, and I don't know if they wear vests now or not?
think so.
I would say yes, because the cars do stop and they know that, everybody knows that when I walk out, the kids will stop for me because the kids know me enough. Because most of the parents are the same ones that come every day, so they see me. And everybody knows that, like, when I do it, I stand on the school side, not on the church side, because that's where you
They
come out.
originate, right?
So they know that they've got to stop and wait for me, and then I go out, and then I tell them that they can cross. And the cars are really good to stop. So,
What do
yes.
you think for a temporary solution? I mean, there needs to be a bigger solution. If you were standing, and it's kind of by that kindergarten, side,
Yes.
and had an orange cone that you could drop as you walked across, so it would kind of be a reminder
that
to
is true.
don't make a right turn. And then, or the regular crossing guard, if they had an extra tool like that,
Right.
because that would
That is true,
highlight,
too.
don't come
Yes.
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you gone in front of the school board and brought this up? This is pretty serious stuff.
This is the first.
What-
This is the first.
No, this is great, but I mean, it's ultimately, in my mind, it seems like the school district and the school is responsible for protecting their kids. And if I'm not a lawyer, but
Well, I think
I would
this would be
light a
good
fire
for
under
us
them
to-
personally.
Maybe later on when we talk about
Yeah.
dates, to really figure out where does the responsibility lie and what can we do to promote action from the responsible parties.
I'd make them feel paranoid for one thing. I'm sorry.
My first conversation was with the police department, like 2.5 weeks ago. And then when I talked to Sue the next week and I said, just so you know, I had to call the police department because there was motorcycles around the stop sign. And then she said, I think I'm gonna put you on to Karen, who's at the district office. That was the first time I've ever talked to someone in the district office. So once I talked to Karen, Karen said, I think we should start some conversations. And so, which I was very thankful for. And so I was glad, I've already gotten an email from her about some other things coming up that she had suggested for as well. So I was glad to see that in hope.
Maybe you should invite her over and let her sit next to you one day.
Could I ask a question? How do they know when a crossing guard doesn't show up? I mean, if you didn't call, would they even know? Okay.
No,
That's not.
no, which is why
There are 4 other
That's
crossing
bad.
guards
That's
or
bad
someone, so,
management.
who also don't show up.
I do it purposely every time. Because I don't know what else to do. Because they would literally, and in the morning, because I'm not there in the morning, and the only reason I know he doesn't show up in the mornings is, so we have our circle driveway, and I asked him at the beginning of the year to put, so I leave cones by like one of our front doors, and I said, will you please put 2 cones out on the one side of the circle driveway? Because if you don't put cones out, the drivers will cut through. And it's really dangerous, because what they'll do is they'll make a U-turn, because they'll come into one side and then slope a U-turn, which is really in essence dangerous, because it's just cutting the crosswalk basically off. So he does. He was very smart, and he'll go get the cones and he'll put them out. So when the cones are not there, it's basically, there was no crossing guard in the morning.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing.
Yeah, and thank you
Thank
for
you.
watching the kids, most importantly.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very
For
much.
stepping up.
I take their lives, try to take them pretty seriously.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
One other oral communication for today is Terry wanted to let you guys know that the council will be receiving, in addition to the minutes that they receive for this group, also a detail or a more detailed kind of discussion, action items from me after each meeting. So in thoughts of having better communication between you guys and the council, that they'll also be getting a summary other than just the action minutes that we do here for the city.
So that's written communication or oral?
Oh, written communications are when people submit letters,
Okay, so
which
that
I do
we
not
didn't-
have any
didn't
for
need
this
that.
meeting.
Okay. So then we'll go on to unfinished business, which is approval of the minutes from the February 14th meeting. So everybody's in favor of approving the minutes?
Can we technically approve the minutes if not a quorum was here at that meeting?
There was a quorum.
No, but the people to approve them need to, does that?
Yeah, you can approve them even if you weren't there.
Okay,
I've
that's,
learned-
I have no
learned that
problem
in
with them,
other
I don't know.
Yeah, yes.
It's fine with me, I'm just asking the question.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Joanne? All right, the minutes from the February 14th meeting have been approved.
Oh, you have to call a vote. So you had in a second, and so now you have to call a vote. So all in favor?
All in favor of the minutes from February 14th? Aye.
Aye. No green lights and red lights.
My apologies for not being as fluent in this.
Don't
all right.
worry
Bye.
about it.
By the next meeting. Better with my Robert's rules. So new business, discussing, we have the 2019 commission goals and priorities. Staff report that Jessica prepared.
And so from the staff report, I took the roles and then the potential topics and priorities, both from meetings that we've had here in the past and also from the committee meetings that were held before this group was officially a commission. So this was not at all meant to be entirely inclusive of what I think or the city thinks that you should be your topics and priorities for the year. It was really just a list to get you guys started on a conversation.
So we'll open it up to discussion about the goals and priorities. And as outlined in the plan, in the report, it has the role of the commission, which has kind of been essentially provided for us, but really thinking about what are those topics and priorities that we want to focus on based on the conversations that we have had in the past and potential ones moving forward. So
Yeah, I've got a question, and I heard that technically our commission does not include safety. Is that a correct statement? I know that's an ongoing conversation between the mayor and the city manager.
Pedestrians.
It's just with pavement, and there was some talk of it adding safety. To me, it seems obvious, but I was talking to Rowena, and she mentioned that wasn't clear.
Well, by putting people first, considering pedestrians, bicyclists, et cetera, I think that implies safety.
I
of
agree
those
with you, but I'm
people.
not sure why it was a point of discussion, because it was just bringing it up. To me, it seems obvious you can't have better streets without safety, but
Right. No, I'm thinking maybe it doesn't mean so much like how it's being policed, perhaps. Maybe that's what she meant. But no, I would say that this isn't inclusive of safety, considering we're talking about pedestrian and bicycles and user issues.
okay, I was surprised to hear it, that's all.
And we have a complete streets statement in place, which means we need to look after the safety of everybody. I mean, I think it's actually required, given that we have that.
I guess my general comment on this, I've done, previous lives, I've done strategic planning and stuff like that for big companies, and that's not what I'm doing now. It's not a one-meeting thing, but I would tend to have more succinct goals and make them more quantifiable. I know it's a great goal. I don't know if we can do it in reality, but there's a lot of really good things here. But I think we should probably try to be a little bit more quantifiable in our goals, like close XYZ plan. The old, I came from Intel, who, what, when type of thing, or Another type world would be, these are my objectives, this is the way I'm going to get there, and these are my tactics. This person's responsible. I think ultimately you can't have a plan unless someone's at least morally responsible for it. It doesn't mean that your options are going to increase if you actually hit the goals, but I would just think in general that we should try to make them at least a tad more quantifiable, and that's easier said than done, I realize.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, I mean, I do strategic planning with schools and districts, and so I understand the, wanting to make sure. I think the purpose right now is for us to see what's really important to us. And since we aren't the ones who are in charge of taking those action steps, which is slightly frustrating, but very important to understand our role in sifting through the information and providing recommendations. I think it would be great for us to talk through, of the, 6 bullet points here, which ones are, and if maybe there's not one here, is there some, is there one that really stands out to us as this would be a really important priority for us to focus on and consider taking some kind of action. And in discussions with Jessica, our action is really about how can we encourage the city council or encourage staff to start to outline projects that have those deliverable goals and the deliverables attached to them, that we're not really responsible for kind of outlining the specific deliverables, although we can certainly provide suggestions about that, but that's my understanding of how we can, because I'm all about action, absolutely, and especially given what Nicole just talked about.
Yeah, of the bullets, in my humble opinion, I think that the whole issue of Dave's, however we word that whole Dave's neighborhood thing, that's got to be, especially given that conversation, and that needs more definition. I think that's something where we could have a plan. We have meetings. We talk about that. I think that's an obvious thing where we're all probably in violent agreement with each other. To me, that's the most important thing in the city. I mean, I keep on saying the same thing like a broken record. If you don't protect your kids, you don't protect the church, and you don't protect the retirement community, what good are we as a city? I think that's really important. The second thing, and I've had my differences with Terry on this and probably with Jessica, I feel strongly that this commission needs to be more proactive with the involvement on the prioritization on the projects, the projects, as far as the prioritization of the projects, and I know I'm probably the lone wolf here, but I am disappointed in our lack of involvement on the prioritization as far as the roads go. I really feel badly. I don't think it was proper to be told that. I wasn't at the meeting 3 days before the meeting and then have it go in front of the council. I don't think it was proper. They weren't involved with the communities or the neighborhoods that were on this next. And this isn't pointing at Jessica. It's just pointed at how the city operates, okay? I think we need to be more proactive involvement. And if we really are looking for feedback, it has to be given in a way where it is in a time period where the council can actually do something about it. Terry got after me for picking on him, but I'm serious. The last meeting where I didn't attend, there was a list of roads priorities that was given like 3-4 days before the actual council meeting. You don't put a plan in place, make changes, and present it to the council 4 days later. I don't think if our input's serious, there has to be a time period where, if we're taken seriously, there's got to be a time period where that's taken into account and discussed. It can't be just flashed and, hey, these roads are great. This is what we should do. Yeah, okay. That's not proactive, and I think that's something that we need to be more involved with in the future.
So I'm going to pause and just check also, because I'm hearing the Daves and the pavement management.
That would be on the top of my list, but.
So Barry, I'm curious, and then Joanne, I'll ask.
Well,
What are your?
one hot button with me that we have never talked about is the intersection of Highway 9 in Austin is, by a factor of 2, the most dangerous intersection in the county for cyclists. I think now it is inside Monte Sereno. And it's controlled by Caltrans. So it's not like we can go do something about it. But whenever we interact with Caltrans, I'd like to work on, I'd like to understand what we can do and figure out a way to make that intersection safer. Have to be through Caltrans. That won't be easy, I know.
It's Highway 9 in Austin.
Austin, yes. I've got statistics if anybody wants to see
I
it.
believe you, but I'll look at
And you're an avid cyclist.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so you're very familiar with.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the problems in person,
Yeah.
and I know several people that have had accidents there, and I've seen the numbers.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I've got a couple other things that are not really not issues like that, but that's things to talk about. And then one is Measure B, the capital funds for bicycles and pedestrians. So there's going to be a one-time window to try to get funds, probably around the end of the year, and there will not be another opportunity for 10 years. They're going to do a 10-year, they're going to call for projects, and they're going to fill up the pipeline for 10 years. That's all this
Can I
new
ask
sales tax money.
who is running it?
VTA
Okay.
runs it. VTA runs it.
State funding or?
It's the
County?
Measure B, the new county property
So
tax.
it's
The one
county,
that-
okay.
The one that's been in a lawsuit with somebody from Saratoga for a couple of years, and the
Okay.
funds were held up. I mean, most of it's going to BART, to San Jose, but there's, is it $60 million, do you happen to
Something
remember?
like that, yeah.
For bicycle and pedestrian things. And so we just have one chance, and I don't even know if we're capable of doing anything, but we have one chance in the next 10 years to get money. The minimum project size is $50,000, and we have to put up 10%. The city would have to put up 10%, or possibly Monte Sereno and Los Gatos together put up 10%, depending on what kind of project it was. And so I just want to make sure everybody understands that we've got to do something right away, or we miss the boat.
Back to Phil's point about
Yeah.
taking action, that there's actually money attached if we can take action quickly and get projects scoped out and support the city staff and council to get projects scoped out.
I don't know what Jessica thinks, it's even something we should be, that makes sense to look at. The application process, I don't know much about. And I know San Jose's like gearing up. They've got a whole bunch of people working full-time on it. And they want all the money for themselves.
Do we know if Los Gatos is working on things? Because I know I worked on the Highway 9 project for years, getting the bike lane and pedestrian path that we have. And that took years of working with, consultants and engineering firms. And that was a much bigger project than finding one specific thing and addressing it. But.
Well, this
yeah.
could be a bigger project than that, but this is
Well,
just
to have it done by the end of the
application
year.
Well, that's just the application. It's not finishing the project. It's,
No, but
Yeah.
you have to have, all your studies in engineering done to even apply usually. Yeah.
And you can apply for studies in engineering. That's one of the
Yeah,
things you could
that's
apply
part,
for, but
yeah.
you lose points if you don't have
If
a
you're not
plan
that
to
far
complete it.
along, yeah.
So that's a very good question. Well, I don't know what Los Gatos is doing. I periodically go to their bicycle and pedestrian committee meeting, but I haven't done that in a couple months.
Jessica, do you know if there's been talk about us doing anything before for that?
Not specifically to Measure B. At the VTA TAC meeting, which that was just yesterday, they were discussing what the criteria should be for evaluating the applications, and nothing was decided, and it went back to their committee. But that is just starting to get stirred up right now.
Okay, so timing is good, yeah.
Well, one other thing we're probably not interested in, Jessica probably knows about this too, the county is redoing their mobility guidelines, I think it's called, so how they're going to treat county roads for pedestrians and bicycles, primarily bicycles, but both. And so they would be willing to come tell us what they're thinking and get our input if we wanted that. I'm not positive we would want to get into that level of detail with the county's plans, but there's an opportunity for that. I thought I would bring it to everybody's attention. My gut feeling is we probably don't want to involved, but I will personally be involved because I'm involved with the VTA, but
Right, and so you serve on another committee?
I
What's your-
represent Monte Sereno at the VTA's Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And so I see a lot of the same stuff that Jessica sees at the TAC meeting. So we got the same presentations, probably got the same presentations yesterday.
Yeah.
So can I ask, when you're talking about Austin, are you talking about in front of the firehouse there when you
Yes.
come down the hill?
Yes.
People have been killed there, bicyclists.
Yes, people have been killed there.
Yeah. It's a hot spot, yeah. The other thing I was,
Yeah, that's an opportunity, actually,
So-
but
Is that within Monte Sereno city boundaries now, or is that still county land right there?
So I need to check, regardless it is Caltrans, anything would have to go through Caltrans, but I would want to say that yes, that part of that would be our responsibility now, but I would
Google
need to
says it
check.
is, but I checked, but
Okay.
you can't completely trust them.
Was it because of the Hacienda Annex or whatever they
Yeah,
call
because
it?
that
Right.
annex, we're on both
Yeah.
sides of the street right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't,
So I can
just in
verify
that same, I'm just thinking out loud on that same route, I know that Sue Jackson sent a letter and she was a mayor a couple times. It was about a sidewalk or something at the end of Dave's, which is kind of close to where you're talking about. I'm just thinking out loud if that was be involved with this or not. She was complaining about the safety at the end of,
Is that the missing portion that?
No, that is right on Highway 9, that's
Okay.
missing. But,
Sue was a mayor, so she knows all the nuts and bolts of it. I just caught it. I could go back and look. I never heard of it before. I don't know.
Yeah, so Dave's is, before you get to that Austin
Right.
part, yeah. And we're talking the other side of the street too.
Or-
Well, and
I'd love your insight and opinion.
just
yeah.
coming into this, I have some other things that are my topics and priorities that I don't know that we should have. I agree, Dave's Avenue, definitely our children, and there's going to be children for years and years and years and more, and it's, it used to be everybody could walk to school, and now they can't, and so that would be my number one priority too. But there are some other things, and Jessica and I we had a meeting where she did orientation. We talked a little about this. I kind of feel I was here on this committee when it was an ad hoc committee, and when Deb Fagone was here, and when we started and she got the pavement management program going. So that was the first time we had kind of a comprehensive look of, what are the state of our roads? What do they look like? What needs to be done? Because before it was just like somebody calls for a pothole, you might get lucky and it might get fixed or it might not, and there was all that money sitting there. So now we have, a comprehensive look at that. So one thing that's important to me is data. And that gives you data so you know what you were talking about. Because I can say my front yard is where the biggest problem is, or the most kids walk by, this corner on the way to Dave's. But, what is it really? And sometimes when you get the engineering studies like around Dave's and stuff, you find things, it reveals things, or you find things that you question, and sometimes you question it and you're right, and sometimes you're not. So data is important to me, and instead of using kind of my intuition about what I think needs to be done, really seeing some data behind it and where it is. So when I look, so there's a couple of things on that. One is the state of the sidewalks. I think that's one thing that we could look at too, and I haven't seen, and I don't believe Monte Sereno has done, although Los Gatos calls for it in their bicycle plan that I'm just starting to read. When I walk, there are places where the sidewalks are really dangerous. And I don't think we've ever looked at those. I don't know how they get fixed if they are. Do you go knock on the homeowner's door? What is it? So if we're talking pedestrians, I think we don't have many sidewalks in Monte Sereno, but the ones that we have are not necessarily in good shape.
Any in particular, I'm just curious, any in particular in an area or?
And that's, is it Los Gatos? Is it Monte Sereno? Did I fall over there? Did I fall over here? When you come, I do kind of a loop when I go down rows. So I go down here, and I've got some sidewalk, and usually they're in pretty good shape. There's a little bit that's not. But there's also part where there's no sidewalk, like at the corner of Andrews and Dave's Avenue. There's that house there that you step up onto gravel, and then you step down off the gravel back into pavement. But there's some when you go around the corner. I go down Dave's Avenue, and then I come up through the end of Rose here and stuff. When you're coming up those streets, whatever that court is that leads into the Presbyterian housing, or it's not Presbyterian anymore.
That's near me, yeah.
Yeah, down there. There's some places that the sidewalk is really bad. So I'm not saying that's a priority, but if you're talking pedestrians, what are our sidewalks? Where are they? Where are the missing links in the sidewalk? Should there always be sidewalks? Are we keeping up the ones that we have? What are we transitioning from something into sidewalks and into roads? And so that that's a thing that bugs me. But the other thing is And like I said, I worked, started that committee that got the Highway 9 project going. I live on a flag lot off Highway 9, just right here, a couple of doors down. And so we got that pedestrian path on Highway 9, and I bugged Monte Sereno for a long time, and it's, you always get, well, it's Caltrans. So we got signs finally that were legal that say no parking, bike lane. Because what happens, and I have a lot of pictures because I brought them to the council, is people park their cars on the path. So if you're like, my mother-in-law lives with us, she's in a wheelchair. I have to push her out in the bike lane, and then I have to push her back, around it. So it was kind of an interesting thing. So finally we got those signs, and they said that'll fix it. Well, then they were still parking there. And there's certain houses that have no good turnaround at them, so I understand why people are parking. But people don't know it's a sidewalk either, a lot of people. It's not, doesn't look like a sidewalk. It goes up like this and curves. So people park there, and then I'd call the cops, and I'd call Terry, and I'd go out and ask them, can you please move your car? This is a sidewalk. And, I watch moms with strollers, and they're going out in the street, and, everybody has to. And there is a decent amount of traffic along there, foot traffic. And the people sometimes would move, sometimes they wouldn't. And Terry, I'd go bug him, and he'd go ask them to move, and they'd put their car right back after they moved it. So then, I was calling the police every time, and it finally came down to they didn't know if it could be enforced, if it was enforceable in court. So they won't enforce something if they can't take it to court with a idea that they can win. So they researched that for months and finally decided they could. Because their officers, they actually told me when I called, we're not going to go out there because we don't know if it's legal for them to park there or not. We don't know either. So now they know they can enforce it. But I've watched there was a police motorcycle cop, and here was a car parked on the sidewalk, and I went over and said, you better move your car because there's a cop right there and you're parking on the sidewalk and you're going to get a ticket. The cop just drove off, walked by him. I mean, they don't care. And so the other thing that's happened is 3 times those signs have been run over, which means somebody has driven up on a sidewalk, and I saw one of them, and flattened the signs. And so people are not only parking on the sidewalk, they're veering off the road onto the sidewalk. So this is a long story about somebody's going to get hurt there. We've already had 3 pedestrians that I've known hit, and 2 of them killed on Highway 9. We've had multiple bicyclists killed.
Lana,
Ridgecrest, and that's the hot spot is where you're talking about Austin.
Lana's husband guy, was it Lana?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
got
he was
hit
hit
one time.
once or twice, yeah.
Yeah, once there and once on
Yeah.
Roberts or Shannon. Yeah. So that's a hot spot for me. And it is in my front yard, so I know about it. Well, it's the end of my driveway. I don't see it. But, I've been talking to Terry. Something needs to be done there because somebody is going to get hurt. And those cars are traveling pretty fast when they come up and knock down those signs. And having somebody parking on the sidewalk means we're having people in the street walking, which is even worse. Yeah. Bad enough the bicyclists have to be there. So that's a hot spot for me. So the other thing, going back quick, when I talked about data, there's Tim's data, which is out of Berkeley, and it's, when I hear the police report, they come in and they report out, how many tickets we've written, how many accidents there have been, blah, blah, blah. The 2 hot spots are Highway 9 and Winchester. That's where, I'd say 80-90% of it happens. So I know Dave's Avenue is huge, but I also think we need to look, if we're going to look at solutions, that's where we got problems, that kind of data. So there's the Switter's data, which is the police data. There's the Tim's data, which is Berkeley does a bunch on bicyclists and pedestrians.
Yes.
Yeah. There's police data. So to me, it's like, okay, there are problems. Unfortunately, we don't have some of the huge problems that other cities do, but where are they? We know there's problems around schools because we're hearing about it. And there's some solutions that are proposed there and stuff, and we can get involved, and that's great. But let's look at where the data says our other problems are, and look at it historically over a few years, and where are they? Yeah. The BTA has, I'm sure, some data, too, that they use for where, what are the bicyclist pedestrian counts? I actually sat out there in front of my house and did bicycle and pedestrian counts that we use for the Highway 9 project. I mean, we can do that if we have to, but where where are the people and where are we having problems? That's what I'd like to look at, yeah. Long rant, but, yeah.
I'd just like to add that I was a science undergraduate, but data's great, but I think you have to temper it with intuition. Just a comment, if all you did was look at data, you just have, you Pareto it and you stick it in a computer and there'd be no management or no human interaction. I had this discussion with Terry also, so it's engineering is really important, but you got to go beyond it and apply. It's a balance between the two. That's my only point. That two things I didn't mention. I wouldn't put them high on the list. One of them, which is kind of a pet interest of mine, definitely lower, is just in general. I'm a believer, and it's not big. I'm a believer in LED lighting, and I know we have very limited lighting in the city, and that does have a bearing on the safety as far as the shape of the lighting goes. Just a minor mention. It's also green because it consumes electricity, and I mentioned it to Mayor, it'd be nice if, just from a lighting standpoint, and it is related to safety and is related to the shape of the light, it reduces flare
Are
into
you
the
talking
air.
about Rose Avenue or the?
I'm talking about Rose Avenue, I'm talking about maybe encouraging the school, even around the parking lot here. Over time, it isn't going to happen overnight, but just from a safety standpoint, from a road safety standpoint, I think we should consider the lighting. And maybe there's some subsidy or something, just something that we should think about. I'm not saying it's our top priority. The other one, which is related to pavement, which I did talk to Jessica about, is keep on thinking about drainage. Jessica and myself talked about it. One of my pet areas, which we'll talk about in the next one, is Bruce Avenue. That there's a lot of streets that are pumping their sump water out on the road, and it's actually degrading the road. And I think what we did on Blanchard was excellent. But it's just something for us to keep in mind that water really does deteriorate the road. Just file in the back of my brain. I'm not saying it should be a top priority, and good engineers like Jessica could figure that out. But it did cause problems. Such lighting and water, and I think we got a lot to do.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about the city is so small that we could almost walk it in quadrants. Whether it's everybody takes one or something, because it's almost like I know where I go. But there's a lot of little courts and little streets and stuff that, and there's no, I've been told that, when people call in and say I have a drainage problem or, there's a pothole here or whatever, my understanding is historically we haven't had a log. So there could have been, all kinds of great ideas emailed or called or whatever in, but unless you get out there and see it, I don't know where that problem log is going to live.
So do we have, because I know that, for example, at a recent city council meeting, somebody shared a street problem that they were having, but we don't tend to see people come to us to have
Right,
folks
so
tell
where
us.
is
So
it-
we
where-
kind of either have to rely on written communications or somehow the city council.
Are you asking, I know when the police department presents, or the fire department, they'll put, not that we have that huge of a crime issue, but they'll put a map of Monte Sereno and say we had a car robbery here and we had, I don't know if it would even be possible, but it sounds like you kind of want a comparable. We've had 10 calls in this area for potholes and I don't even know if that's possible, but I mean,
Just even a list. It's
Yeah.
easy for me to heat map or geographically locate the incident, but
No,
just having a sense for.
My understanding, there hasn't been I think the city's working on it, right?
Right.
Yeah, but
Okay.
there hasn't
Okay.
been, yeah.
So, I guess kind of bringing this back, it sounds like Dave's is the number one. If we were to come up with to move forward and prioritizing that as a conversation and recommendation piece, that would be a number one, kind of agreed upon.
I agree.
And in looking at kind of what else our work is, the pavement management program kind of seems to fall under, we get updates on it and it's a component, but is that something that we can, I guess I'm wondering, how do we prioritize things knowing that there's so many interconnected pieces? So after Dave's, and it takes care of, right, it has some interconnection between some issues on Bruce and there's just some connection. So with the pavement management project, we need to stay updated on it.
Well, I think it's more than an update, to be fair. I think we need to know before the decisions are made. It's one thing to be updated, but if we're updated at the point where everything's done already, who cares? It's got to be, hey, we're thinking about doing this. We have these 5 streets. Then we say, hey, I know the number's higher on that one versus that higher. Pareto it, hey, school kids, that's not in your number. I think we need to be it needs to be reviewed in an orderly fashion where we can actually have input. Doesn't mean we have to dictate the input, but we can at least be considered, and I think that's one of the big things in the future that we need to consider. I think it needs to be presented to us in a way where we can actually affect things. If we can't affect things, why are we here? I don't want to be here just to nod. I'm not going to be here next year. I don't want to be here just to nod and say, oh, that looks nice. I'm going to say, hey, look, I honestly think this street should be higher priority than that street. We talk about it. Hey, Phil, you're wrong. That's cool, but at least we've talked about it.
So I would, and I don't know a lot about the pavement management program. I was here when it, originally came out with the data and stuff. My understanding there was prioritization in that project. In other words, it was, here's what we need to do first, given X amount of money, here's what we're going to spend, and that it was kind of all ranked out there.
I had this discussion with Terry, and I do not believe it's only an engineering decision. We disagree on that. I think anytime you have anything that's just an engineering decision, you will get. I don't think that's right.
Okay.
You just need a computer and put the numbers in there, and what do you need people for? Just spit it out, Pareto it, and do linear programming, allocate it against your budget.
Yeah.
That's not what management's about.
So it wouldn't be a priority for me, but yeah, I'm willing to go with what the council.
Well, I mean, there's streets that have been prioritized where we weren't even invited to talk to the neighborhood. I'm sorry, I don't think that's right. They have something in the council next week for Accountability Act where they're actually putting money out for neighborhoods. Equestrian, have we ever talked about equestrian? Have we ever been asked to walk down equestrian? Is equestrian really a priority in our mind? Well, guess what? There's a budget that's going to go in front of the council next week. I don't think we ever gave any input on that. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it needs to be presented to us in such a way that we at least get our input prior to going to the council. This is going in front of the council next week.
Well, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for trying to think about kind of creating the strategy. That do we have the data? Do we have the input on where the condition of the streets and really knowing so that we can then be armed and prepared for conversations? Or
I think
Pavement management.
I think they've done a pretty good job. I think they've done a
has
good job
every
on that.
street, and they're ranked as to
Yeah.
what condition they're in and the priority of getting them done.
And so what we don't know is when they're coming up.
And it needs discussion. It isn't just a blind Pareto, net present value, stick it in the computer and spit out the answer. There's management involved with it. I'm sorry. It's not. It's a good basis to do on the data, and I think you guys did a wonderful job on the data, but it's not a cold-hearted data Pareto, the thing without any human involvement. I'm sorry. It just isn't like that.
Jessica, what's your comment on bringing us into the process a little earlier?
Sure.
I mean, it does seem reasonable
Yeah.
that we could talk about it a month or two in advance of it going to the city.
Sure.
I don't want to micromanage it, though.
No, I completely agree. Just so you know, the pavement management program has to be updated every 2 years, so they're going to do the assessment of all the streets again this fall, winter, and there'll be a new report. I will say that we were a little time constrained this year because part of my engineer's report is that came back from bid. We're going to award a contract so we can get it done this summer. And so to back that up and to be creating a bid package and selecting the street really put us short on time this year since I only got here at the beginning of December. But note definitely taken that with this next pavement management update, with the report that should be coming out early next year, and then next year's street selection will definitely come to you while there is still time to make comments on it.
So it sounds like it probably won't be an issue.
I hope so. I'm going to see commitment from the city manager and everybody else, but yeah.
Well, it sounds like then in that case, maybe it's not a secondary priority, considering, I mean, I think we have some agreement.
It's your choice, but this is the biggest fiscal investment for the city. I mean, this is the biggest fiscal investment in the city, and to say that's not a priority, it's the biggest chunk of money the city is spending, and it's on roads. And if that's not a priority for the Better Streets Commission, what is? I mean, it's a huge chunk of money. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. But I don't see, I mean, I have confidence that Jessica's going to bring us into the process, and I'm just not worried about it right now.
I am, because I know equestrian somewhat, and I know Bruce somewhat. I was told that we couldn't change Bruce because of what's going around Poppy, but going around the school, but Poppy changed. So I don't know what the city's strategy is. I'm really concerned. I'm not that confident.
Well,
And I think it needs to be a priority.
So let me ask, so what, it's already gone out to bid, what's being worked on now?
The regular, like the slurry seal, the just pavement treatments have already gone out to bid, and we're awarding a contract. That is correct.
Will there be other work done before that other engineering study is done? So before fall, winter?
Yes, so there's two projects. One is just our general pavement maintenance, which is being awarded, and then the other is the neighborhood improvement project, and that's what we're referring to with, it's Equestrian, Palos Verdes, and Via Vaquero, and that is actually on the council to award a design contract. And so that is hopefully going to be constructed towards the end of the construction season this summer, but we're a bit behind because we don't have a design yet. So those are the two projects that will be completed before this next round of the pavement study is completed.
Yeah. So when the design consultants are selected and then that's award, they present, who do they present to, the council?
So I get it, we go through a couple rounds of review. We'll come back to this commission to see the project and what it usually involves curb and gutter, maybe some drainage improvements and then roadway improvements. And then it gets bid out and goes to the council for
So we
award.
will have a chance to provide feedback once it's presented?
Yes.
Okay, so.
It sounds like there's a process for us to be significantly engaged.
Yes, I think a little bit more what Commissioner Levine is referring to is how those streets were selected. Basically, the beginning of that process.
I mean, we should have walked equestrian. If equestrian is a priority, we should have walked equestrian. We should have discussed why equestrian versus Palo Verde. And I'm sorry, it's not just a number on the sheet. There's more to it than that.
I do remember those streets being
They were mentioned,
talked
but
about, yeah.
we didn't discuss them, really. I mean, there was no,
Part of it is our fault
well,
for not demanding answers then when we first heard about it.
I tried.
Well, I think moving forward, though, and what I appreciate is that trying to make sure that we are more on top of it. And so what I think we're hearing is that there's going to be an intentional effort to make sure that we're sunshined much earlier in the process and given information. And it's not to say that it won't be a priority. I mean, it could be number 3, and we still take it very seriously. And we, when it comes up, that we maintain focus on that, and that we make a commitment to go walk and collect the evidence that we need, and whether that's as a group or individually.
I guess I want to make it clear in my conversation with Terry, as I was talking about this, he basically described it as being an engineering decision model, okay? And I just, engineering is important. I've had engineers report to me. I just disagree that it's a bland engineering analytical decision process. I just disagree with that. It's a combination of the two. You got to have both.
Then let me ask the fellow we know that this is important, but is there something else that would supersede, that would come before the pavement management? If we're thinking waves is number 1, what else do we hope to accomplish in the next year that we want to make sure that we set our sights on? Learning about, educating ourselves, providing.
If I got to pick, it would be Highway 9. Highway 9. There's more than one part to Highway 9. So
Yeah, and I would like to say, again, where are our problems? I think they're Highway 9 and Winchester would be, from what I've heard. So, I'm not against myself diving into the data and making sure that, but yeah.
Can I just ask on that? I mean, you're absolutely right, but realistically, I mean, Winchester is controlled by Los Gatos, right? If I'm not
Portion
mistaken.
of it's.
Yeah, well, I thought the street, even though we own part of it, we're on one side of it, I thought I was through this when Mark Brodsky was mayor. You don't know who Mark is. I thought that Los Gatos actually controls the street. I'm not using the right terminology. Is that a correct? I think it's a great idea. I just don't want to focus on something that everything's going to Los Gatos unless we're going to jawbone with Los Gatos.
Well, the good thing when you partner with Los Gatos is they've got, more staff and more
Yeah,
money.
that's true.
And when you have two cities asking for something, you're going to get funding a lot easier than one city asking, yeah.
And I'm particularly interested in Winchester. I live right off of Winchester, but given the beach traffic and the congestion, I'm not saying to throw that up there, but I think that educating ourselves more, I appreciate that. Where are the hot spots? Do we share space with Winchester?
Yeah, I was one of the.
My assumption when I met with Matt Morley is that Monte Sereno does have some ownership over the parts that are within our boundaries. Those are Monte Sereno.
I was one of 3 or 4 people that was putting the crosswalk in at Dave's. That didn't exist. It was me. We actually picketed one day. Actually, I was one of the. We actually picketed one day. Mark forgot his name, but you'll notice on that street that there's 2 symbols on the street sign on Dave's. There's both a Monte Sereno logo and there's also a Los Gatos logo, and that's kind of what you're alluding to. One of the things we were talking about at the time, which kind of supports what you're saying, is we talked about the island in the middle of Dave's, that one of the things to slow traffic down is you make the island more attractive, for lack of a better word. You can put a statue on it, you put flowers on it or something like that. But I mean, Mark Brodsky had a lot of ideas. He went through the council a lot. We actually brought planners in about, his whole point was, gee, maybe you narrow Winchester and then the cars would slow down, because right now it's this wide thing. So yeah, there's a lot you can do, and there was a lot discussed about 6 or 7 or 8 years ago on there. But yeah, and yeah, we did get we got a crosswalk in, and I'm still really proud of that.
Well, and we didn't talk about beach traffic and summer traffic.
Yeah, I don't know what we can, I mean, it's great, but what,
Well, it's a hot topic with me because it impacts my neighborhood, and Los Gatos does things that they shut down Monte Sereno streets without us knowing about it.
do you think we could affect, I mean, it's an issue, but do you think we can really do anything about it?
Well, we can influence.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
mainly
it's
what we
definitely
do
an issue.
anyways.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
I mean,
Good job.
Well, and that's a good point, because even though we can't, say, here's the solution, we're going to do this, and we want, this, but if Los Gatos is complaining and, we're complaining, then it adds another voice too. So, yeah, it's not a topic that we shouldn't.
And I'm not, but with the Measure B funding, is that something that, a comprehensive project in partnership with Los Gatos around somewhere on Winchester or Highway 9, is that something that is worthy of the Measure B? So it kind of ties to your goal, if there's an opportunity for us to think about
Well, and
the
there's
hot
projects
spots.
in here, by the way, too.
And there's some already outlined. So I'm going to go back just so I can, in terms of facilities, to kind of think about what our priorities. Dave's number 1. Would it be fair to say something around Winchester Highway 9 and whether, and it's up to us in the next months to figure out kind of what that might be, do some more investigation, research, because it applies to Measure B. So trying to do it a little.
yeah, even if we didn't bring in Measure B, I'd still like.
Still like to, move forward. And then the project management is number 3 of our kind of, we have to stay focused on that. That's kind of that's our foundation of how we are improving our streets.
Sounds reasonable.
Does that sound reasonable?
And I think that, your number 2, so Winchester Highway 9 is kind of bicycle and pedestrian master plan review projects, blah, blah. I mean, it's kind of, that's a part of it, so.
They kind of do
Yeah.
bleed together. But I think we'll just have to get clear on specifically what do we do with that big bucket of Winchester Highway 9, making sure that we're then.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy problem.
Yeah.
That's a,
But what do we need, what are the action steps that we need to do to figure out what would we recommend or?
light rail to Santa Cruz.
I think that's,
Jessica will do it.
we used to have the train, why don't they bring the train back? Yes, okay.
That sounds reasonable. So do we need to, how are we going to document this? Is it?
Can I ask one more question too? Jessica, in the great orientation you gave me, you had talked when I asked you about, what our committee could do to be helpful to you. You were talking about, there was a timeline for some kind of funding, and so we were going to, if we could come up with some projects that there was, And I can't remember what funding, was that the Measure B funding that you were talking about, or was that something else?
I don't think we discussed that. The other funding that's coming up is the active transportation plan
Okay.
funding, which is what the state has rolled Safe Routes to Schools and then another couple other programs into, that they only do a call for project every 3 or so years, and it looks like that's also going to be coming in the next, like, probably early next year will be the call for projects.
So that could be around the Dave's Avenue, if we could really focus
Absolutely.
that, then that would help get that funding, so that's a
Yes.
timeline.
Yes.
This is a total,
Thank
probably
you.
off-the-wall question, but this whole thing that's going on in the state with zoning around major transportation, I don't want to go into the housing thing, but the whole idea is if it's around a major transportation hub, like a bus stop or something like that, there's more variability in the zoning. Is there anything within, how am I asking this? Is there anything within Monte Sereno with planning, either on Winchester or 9, that would put us in that window that we should consider? Forget about the housing aspect. I'm just thinking, does that make sense? I mean, are there bus stops? Is there something that could affect our roads that would?
I don't think it applies to us.
No, it doesn't apply to us at all. I don't know. Like, there's a bus stop right near Dave's in Winchester. Is that considered something that would say, okay, now we can put up 5-story buildings, or no?
Much higher level of transit.
Okay, that's fine. Just thought I'd ask because I know that's a hot issue in town.
So it sounds like we have two funding deadlines coming up here, and so that kind of influences the priorities too, which
Yeah.
reinforces those would both be
Those
great.
priorities, yeah. If you have any, I was going to move into the meeting dates. So, yeah.
But are you gonna have a list, or can we?
Yes.
Can we agree on a list? And
Yes.
can we keep?
Do you want me to write? I mean, I don't know.
I
how
think
this
what you
works.
just
I'm-
I
I'd
think
like
what
to
you
keep
just said
beach
was,
traffic on there, at a lower level if we could.
Okay.
And,
Kinda add
well,
it
that's
to
kind
the-
of with Winchester, right? No?
and what Highway 9 is
Oh,
also.
yeah.
it's
I
not-
can't
it's
get
not
out of
just
my
Winchester.
driveway.
Yeah, well, I think beach traffic applies to both of those. I mean,
Right,
it is
right.
absolute gridlock.
It applies to
both
some,
ways,
or
so-
Dave's
Streets
Avenue
too.
too, something
Yeah,
to
and
cut
then they
through,
use,
and-
yeah.
Ridgecrest.
We
So-
actually 2 years ago, we actually had ways with sending people down Poppy because Winchester was
Yeah.
backed up with, I've never seen it. It happened once. It was an exception, but it's crazy.
So what?
So can we have 4? And that can be, so we were talking about Dave's
Well-
Avenue schools, we were talking about Highway 9.
Don't only call Dave's, let's include the church, that neighborhood, because we got, the church needs to be, that's part of our neighborhood. And the,
Dave's cluster.
yeah.
It's the school. I mean, for me, it's the school, it's the church, and it's.
And to a limited degree, you
and
got,
it's kind of pop. I mean,
you got the retirement, community at the end of Poppy with the,
it's a safe route to school. I'm not sure how we're supposed to work. It's a kind of a funny environment for me because I would much rather sit at a table and like say, okay, I'm going to draft the.
why don't you draft it and
what
put,
says.
I don't, does that violate Brown Act or maybe I don't,
If I write them down, are you taking notes? How does
I
it-
am taking notes.
Okay.
If you want to send me your notes afterwards,
Okay.
and we can confer before I write up that summary for council, make sure
Okay.
we have the same
how do you
thing.
do that without violating the Brown Act and still have us all kind of, hey, did you mean to say that, or I,
Would it be in updating the minutes? So in the minutes, it would be recorded of what the priorities are, and then you have to
Okay,
look
however,
back at the minutes, and we can all just make sure that that's our process for.
Right. So we do action minutes, but I can put a very abbreviated list
Okay.
in those minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, that would be.
So something like beach traffic, I mean, I'm not saying we need to do something, but I would like to at least
contribute?
contribute or be, be told of what Los Gatos' strategy is and whether, give us the opportunity to provide feedback. So that's a little bit different than, something that we're gonna go fix.
Yeah.
But,
Be in the loop, kind
Well,
of.
Maybe there's the fourth bullet is really developing a partnership with Los
It
Gatos.
definitely
I
affects
mean,
us.
because it's not just, regardless of beach traffic, we share Winchester. I mean, so we share Winchester and Highway 9. We share kids who are transversing different, lines between getting to Dave's even.
Oh, Poppy actually checkers between Monte Sereno and Dave's depending on the lot.
So
I mean,
the,
it's,
the way that we're situated. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to think about how we can either, just stay more informed and develop a partnership with their like organization or
Oh, they have a traffic
They have a-
committee too.
They do. I forget what exactly they're called
Yeah,
though.
so maybe it's inviting, somebody from their traffic committee to come and share
That's
with
actually not
us,
bad. That's a
and
good idea, actually.
Vice versa, that we can go and say, hey, here are our priorities, these are the things that we're working on, and,
Saratoga might have something for 9, eventually. I'm just thinking out loud.
but that way we can make
good
sure that
idea.
we're intentionally staying connected, and especially coming summer. Staying involved.
Need a train.
Okay, so, quick recap, Dave's. Number 2 is Winchester Highway.
And when you say Dave's, you mean the
The whole corridor.
yeah. I just don't want to forget about the
Number
church
3
because
is
I
the
thought that was.
Pavement. This is very shorthand, I'm just going.
No, that's you got it. That's good.
Number 4 is an LG partnership. An LG street partnership. That sound about right?
Yeah, but including beach traffic or somehow mention?
Including beach traffic.
Yeah, that sounds-
Absolutely. We can
Beach traffic.
absolutely
Sounds
do
good to me.
that. Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. Now, before we move on from this section, the other part that I know that I'd mentioned to individuals is about making sure that we know when we're meeting. Because these are great things, but for me, I'd like to plan ahead and make sure that we're all in agreement about when we're meeting, and either we can plan ahead. So on page 3 of the staff report, Jessica outlined the scheduled meetings, and this is where I was slightly confused because the website said one thing, and I'm not sure, I just got confused
It's once a quarter enough.
about what we're doing.
It's once a quarter enough, or
So I think that's our question. Right now, it's the second Thursday of the month, which would be the second Thursday of the month. The even months. So June 13th, August 8th, October 10th, and December 12th. Those would be, if we meet the second Thursday, based on.
so the next one's
starting-
in June.
So the next one would be June 13th.
And none of those are holidays, right? Or no?
Right, none of those are holidays.
Okay.
They don't fall during any spring breaks like this one did, or on I think to your point, Phil, can we meet quarterly? When I look at this list, my inclination is I want to meet as often as we can to try to
I don't think quarterly is enough for that list.
gain traction.
I don't know about you, but I can't solve beach traffic once a quarter.
Well, she's got it it's every other
Yeah.
month right now.
Yeah,
Oh,
right
okay.
now it's every other month.
Well,
So
that's
it feels,
reasonable. That's
looking at these dates, it feels really short because that's just for the rest of, but that doesn't include 2020. So this just maps out 2019.
I'm history in 2020. I'm
All right, so
retired.
you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 more meetings.
I got my pension from you guys.
Do these meeting dates?
They seem doable, and then I'm thinking with that's a pretty lofty goal, that we should do our homework in between and be prepared to be knowledgeable about those topics and about what the options are with Dave's. And yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of partners with the Dave's things. Besides the school and the church and the police department and whoever's the crossing guard people and
The neighborhood of the people that live there, like myself. Yeah.
Yeah. There are, and hopefully when we tackle that, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to.
I've got an idea, but let's wait till we get to the Dave section.
So we're good with the meetings, and
Yeah, go
I
for it.
imagine that if anything comes up in the meeting,
We do our best.
we can make adjustments.
You'll never
but-
please everybody all the time
yeah.
with meeting dates, so
But
just
put
go
these
for
on
it.
your calendar.
That will be on the minutes or something, right?
Great. Yes, they'll be in the minutes.
Great.
Yes, they'll be in the minutes. Will be in the minutes. They're also right here.
In the
Very
agenda.
good. In the agenda, yes. Okay. So that concludes this section. I wrote on my agenda. So the next new business, Dave's Avenue. Yay. And so we'll start with the staff report, Jessica.
Sure.
Is that?
So in your packet, there's a staff report. We kind of went over the background of the Safe Routes to School plan. It is my understanding that the city wasn't really involved in developing that plan, so it's really important for this group to think about what is also serving the city as well as what serves the school for projects in the city's right-of-way. So I put a summary of all of the suggested improvements from Alta Planning, who is a well-respected consultant for this kind of thing. They do safe routes to school plans all over the state, all over the country, actually. And I also attached the relevant pages to Dave's Avenue School from the report, which is also available online if you care to read any of the other schools. And with that, so that's all provided for your discussion this evening.
And this was done by, for the Safe Routes to School organization? Or was it done specifically for the city of Monte Sereno, or how was this generated?
Megan actually might have more information for that, but it included
I believe
all
it
of the
was
public
like-
schools.
Yeah, the Safe Routes to School organization, which just supports the schools and districts in creating these. So I think it worked in conjunction with Los Gatos School District and the police department, but it was spearheaded by, like, they're the ones who
Okay.
kind of collect it.
Who are they?
It's a national organization.
So, okay.
But you kind of start your different regions and districts kind of start their own chapters, or different counties is person's version. And so I think it was started as a kind of outside nonprofit, and now it's being more housed in the school district.
So it's a nonprofit that the school district leveraged or something like that. Okay.
If I remember correctly from attending the Los Gatos Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting, they actually had somebody report out on that at that meeting. There may have been one of the committee members was also on Safe Routes to School, so they were really kept apprised of what was going on. And if we're going to use this, we probably need the same thing.
Yeah, so I will say Jim Helm, who was the engineer, the consultant last year, he did talk to the gentleman who ended up writing the report, because we did we walked the school together last year several times, Jim and I, to kind of go through what did the report say, what were some, and so.
But are there Los Gatos people on Safe Routes to School team that have meetings? Does that exist?
Yes. So, and I am actually the representative for Dave's Avenue. And it's how it works is right now the representative is through the Home and School Club. So and I think that's how the other schools operate, that it's a volunteer position. But there's a person, Karen, at the district who's kind of manages the nonprofit organizational aspect of it and does communications. And so we have every other month regular meetings to talk about what's happening, but it's really around education, enforcement, and encouragement. And so things that we do at the school to educate the kids. So I held a bike rodeo in the fall where we taught kids about the fourth graders about bike signals and bike safety. There's a third grade bike helmet fitting where Fisher Middle School kids have been helping the third graders learn how to properly fit their helmets. So there are aspects that are really kind of housed internally in the school. And then this component, I wasn't there. We moved back right when this kind of got rolled out, so I missed the inception and creation of it. So
Hey, Jessica, this is your area of expertise, and I know you weren't part of it. What's your honest opinion of this? I mean, do you read it and say, "Gee, I don't know why they did X, Y, and Z," or you read it and go, "Yeah, this feels." I know you're new, but what's your gut?
Well, knowing Alta Planning, they tend to have very good suggestions. Definitely, this was written to serve the school, not so much to serve the city, which is the point. The school's the one who sponsored the study. That said, I think they provide very good suggestions as to some of the traffic patterns. I know that the school has adopted as their suggested circulation, what was laid out in this plan, and some more permanent measures are needed to make that something that people actually do. And I think it would be in the city's best interest to move forward with at least some of their recommendations. But I don't think any of the recommendations in here are bad. I think they're all good. Yeah.
I had a couple things. Number one, I was surprised, and I know when you define a system, you always got to put boxes around it. I was really surprised, if I'm reading this correctly, that neither Bruce nor San Benito were included in it. And I have for the life of me, Bruce is like the number 2 way into the school. I have no idea how you could consider a safety. San Benito is pretty minor, but there's no way you could look at safety coming in the days without looking at Bruce. That to me is a major flaw. The other thing is that whatever we come up with, whatever we suggest, I would highly recommend, since this is school-centric, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be school-centric, that I think we should have a community meeting at some point at Dave's Avenue School, inviting the neighborhood, because I've got my opinion, but I don't represent my neighborhood. I think we need to get the people that live there and are there for 25 years and aren't gone every 6 years to actually look at this and see us affected. So I would, at some point, and I don't know, maybe the fall, I don't know what makes sense to be, to have a school community, church community, retirement community, actually neighborhood meeting. I don't know who would present it or how it would be presented, maybe at Dave's Avenue School, to say, this is what we plan to do. What's your feedback? I think that would be really important, and not, this can't, God bless you for doing it, but it can't be a school-only decision. It's got to involve all the parties.
Well, and I will say, in working with the school, they also struggle because they know that it can't be a school-only decision, and that I think figuring a way out for it to be a partnership. And so for us to think about what can we offer first, and how can we share that with the school, and what's their opportunity, and how can we all collectively come back is really, it's the only path forward to come up with something.
But the thing that really jumped out at me, and you could ask about this sign versus that crosswalk, and you guys, I really trust you guys on this. The really thing that jumped out at me was the lack of Bruce, and especially Bruce. I have no idea how you could do a safety study without looking at Bruce. To me, that's just nuts. But maybe they said, hey, this is the line of the system, we're going to ignore it. These cars jet down Bruce, they go down Poppy, or they come down, Days, and then, that to me is the circulation that's got to be looked at. And that does cross Los Gatos in places, it crosses
Right.
Monte Sereno in places.
So maybe there's an opportunity for us to examine what's in here, and then to Joanne's point, really think about collecting data and because you live there.
Yeah.
And I drive through sometimes
22
because
years,
I try
yeah.
to get around, but maybe there's an opportunity for us, before we invite community input, just to kind of see what's happening on Bruce in the morning and the afternoon, so that we can, even though it's not included here, we can think through a holistic approach to supporting Dave's. Again, it's a corridor. It's not just the elementary school. It's it's all the how is it impacting all the players who are in that vicinity.
Yeah, and they were talking, I don't know if it was in this report, they were talking about reversing the paths down Poppy or
Right.
something like that.
The side parking lot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't thought, it's not just me, it's the whole neighborhood. The neighborhood's got to be brought into that. I don't know what the implications are. Even something, I think they're okay. Are the stop signs, they're probably okay. That's not my area of expertise. Do you do stop signs or crosswalks with LEDs and are those more effective? Are they not cost effective? I don't know, but I think all that stuff needs to be looked at. I like the speed decrease. I think that's great. Does something need to, they're talking about bulbing up in areas, which I thought was a really good idea. Speed's a real issue. I don't know what you saw.
So I'm gonna jump in, because
Yeah.
I am curious, because some of these, so for example, the left turn lane installation, that was on the plan and it was completed. It was,
Right.
felt like that was a huge accomplishment
Right.
to.
And is
for-
that helping?
And I believe it is helping, yes. It's helping the line that's been queued up, and the, getting honked at.
You're talking about on Dave's into
On
Poppy.
days, yeah, where you can now take a
Yeah.
left, right? So that lane. So that feels like an accomplishment, and kind of like I get to mark that off of. We did that on the plan, and check. So I'm curious, though, Barry and Joanne, if you haven't had a chance to look through these, and if any of the action items here jumped out at you, you're curious about, you say, well, this would be a.
Well, I thought one that should be taken off is the Poppy Lane driveway reconfiguration, $500,000. I mean, if you're looking, I don't, and it would be nice to rank these like bang for your buck, like,
Yeah.
and it would have been nice if the consultants did this. I know in this plan, they did like, who does it affect? Drivers, pedestrians, or like,
Yeah.
or, what's the impact of doing it? That's what, I don't know. And it would be helpful, I should go out
Yeah.
there during, peak times and see, because my kids
Yeah.
haven't been there for a long time, and see, which, so there's a lot of different price tags here.
It's gotten better by the way. It's got a ways to go, but it's gotten a lot better.
The list or
No,
the
the
traffic?
whole area it's gotten better.
Yeah.
It's gotten better.
Since last year?
Yeah, I think it's gotten better.
So they did some internal changes that I wonder how that, because the school's been trying to figure out how they can.
Yeah, education. So then where
yeah.
are the hot spots and which ones of these address the hot spots, you know? So without me going out
Yeah.
there,
Well,
I
I-
can picture these,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
I drive it. I'm not I won't be Mr. Analytic with the left-hand turn, even though that left-hand turn lane is a great improvement. One day, and I sent a message to Terry, it was about 4 months ago, somebody walked away from the car. The problem is that the area between, and I don't know the answer, the area between where Dave's is and where the turn is on Poppy, the cars just sit there and they block it, so the neighborhood can't get through. There's got to be someone, they have a hard enough time getting a crossing guard there, but there really needs to be someone that, and they're doing so much better and they do their best, but in that particular case, someone walked away from their car and the whole thing, it took me 20 minutes, I timed it, took me 20 minutes, and this is an exception, to go from the kindergarten to across River Vista where our house is. Okay, I could have crawled it on all fours, no joking faster, so generally it's a lot better than that, but car speed's an issue. I mean, I see it every morning. It's gotten better.
So if they're able to speed, it means they're not jammed up.
Well, it depends on which direction. Like when they're
Because
gunning,
speed is an issue,
I would say
but
Bruce is speeding, and then Poppy, they get jammed up.
they get jammed up when they approach the school. That's correct.
so they speed to get there and then there's,
Yeah. So I think to me, it's, what are there things on Dave's and then the Poppy corridor? They're two interesting.
And the road management fits into this. I mean, my pet peeve, and Jessica and Terry are sick of hearing me, but there's potholes on Bruce, there's water on Bruce. People are gunning their car down, and analytically, Bruce maybe shouldn't have been on the list, but intuitively,
well, and after this winter, things may have changed.
yeah. But anyway, there's a lot of stuff to look at.
So I can't speak intelligently to these except to the price tags without at least being out there to examine the traffic patterns.
Megan, didn't the principal come talk to us?
Yes.
And maybe we should talk to him or somebody else equivalent and see what do they think the issues are? How big are the issues? How much did we already fix with the parking lot changes and the left turn change?
And what are they doing that's not on this list that's actually affecting some change?
Yeah.
So maybe but this might be so the school, there's a new principal. So the leader that came and spoke with us last spring.
Oh, is he
no
gone?
longer there. Yeah.
Is he
so
gone?
He
Oh.
is, yeah, he moved on. And we have a fantastic, really vibrant new leader.
That's what they said about him.
And we have been in communication. There's a safety traffic committee that's comprised of teachers and parents and the school leader. It's been a little bit slow in getting back this year. But I know that they're hoping to meet in the near future. And I'm wondering, it would constitute a commission meeting if we all got together again. There's so much benefit if we were to have enough time in advance to actually have a meeting with their safety group and hear from the school and the teachers and the parents who are involved in thinking through, kind of can share what they've done. Instead of this all going back and forth and waiting months and going.
I keep on coming back to it. I'm sorry, but you cannot forget the neighbors. I'm sorry. The people on Bruce feel like they've been ignored for 25 years, and you need to go ask Dave Collins and Susan Collins and all these the
Phil,
hoax
to
and
your point, maybe then there's a benefit to us hosting.
Yeah.
And then I think we're constrained by the school year. For the school, so doing something right now within this, and they're getting people together.
Probably not. You're gonna do it before the end of this. Ow.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Jessica, we occasionally, on the other committee that I'm involved in, have something called a workshop.
Yes,
And
that's
where we
exactly
can
just
have
what I wrote
these
down.
kind of things, and somehow
Yes.
it's legal.
Right.
Could
Considered a special
we have a
meeting.
workshop with these people.
Yeah, we've done that.
Yes, that's something we could set up if they are willing.
I mean, it
would
seems
have
like
to, yeah.
they probably have the answers. We just need to. We really need to engage.
just need to communicate.
We need to engage with
collaborate,
these people,
yeah.
otherwise, I think we're wasting our time working on Dave's.
Right, we
Avenue.
pick,
Yeah.
hey, we want this and
Yeah.
this to be our
Yeah.
priority.
No,
and-
I think I'm right, but I want to get the other opinion, and, you know, I
Yeah,
don't know.
so,
And is that one workshop or one with the neighbors and one with the school?
I think you got to put them all together.
I want to talk to these people first and come up with something a little more specific before we talk to the neighbors.
Well, I mean, we've lived there for 20-something years, and I'm going to pick on the people in the school who are there for 6 years, and to say the school is important, but
And
I've
that's
been there
what,
for.
that what concerns me is a
No,
battle.
it's not a conflict, but I went through the school remodel, so I know what it's all about. You weren't sitting at this, I was sitting in the audience, and you gotta be able to get both inputs. There's
Yes,
not
yes.
one side has a monopoly on it.
And certainly, I don't.
And I don't
I
think
certainly
they're
hope that
diametrically
wouldn't be the
opposed
case.
either.
I
But-
think for process and strategy wise, I think it would be beneficial because they control 500 children and their parents about how kids are arriving, being encouraged to arrive, and being encouraged to leave the school every day. And so I think talking to them and seeing what systems do you have in place, what's your process, what are you trying that we can understand, so that we can be better communicators when we bring the
Educated,
community
yeah.
in. Otherwise, we're just going to say like, we don't know, go talk to the school. And that won't serve anyone. But I think if we can workshop with the school and then workshop with the community and very soon thereafter.
And the church.
Yes, and I mean, I see the church coming in with the school.
No,
or the
that was-
community.
yeah.
Nicole is very happy to be a part of this. She and her family, have been here for years and years. So, I think the idea. Thank you for the word workshop. That if we can make that happen, so that we can actually collect input and engage in conversations.
Well, it was alluded to many times, but when we were in the planning, God, it was 10 years ago, we had a workshop at Dave's Avenue School on the planning issues for the housing, and I don't want to go through that again, but it was exactly what you talked about. I mean, I think we could facilitate, but it was open communication, and they sat, and I think it's a really good idea.
So I think what you're asking, you're both asking for to know, well, the money, this is where this is not my area of expertise, this money. There's also, it's not that we can do, what would be, if you had to say, let's do this first and then this, it's like dominoes. I'd love to do all of this at once, but if we tackled this one first and then sequence this one and then this one, that it would be
prioritize
really
them.
nice to have, what that prioritized list and best case scenario,
And if we can come up with that, then you can work on applying for some of that grant money that's coming up.
Yeah.
So this is very
And the
valuable.
sequence is
Yeah.
going to be depending on the engineering too, because you don't want to do X if you got to do Y first,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And is that something that we can ask? I mean, I would love your expert opinion of here's what I would recommend that we would do first. Here's what we would, do these two things second. Maybe avoid doing this thing because it's not within the feasibility for the
Oh,
next
I know
10
when I
years.
asked, did the fire department ever bother coming back to us and tell us what streets they actually have official access to? 2 meetings ago, they said they were going to do that. Did that ever happen?
Yes, that was actually going to be part of my engineering report. Yes, they did. I have a list of streets.
And the answer is?
With Dave's Avenue, yes, it's on the list of streets.
So what streets? Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Just a little bit, but is it possible for you to prioritize? Is that asking?
I mean, I can definitely
Otherwise,
use
it
my
would-
professional opinion to prioritize this. To answer Joanne's earlier question, there was a couple pages back here where they took each suggested project and put a bike or pedestrian or a car in
Okay,
there.
that's
So
where I
just-
saw that.
Yeah,
Okay,
just so
thank
you know. I think
you.
the other project might have done that as well. But it just kind of depends on how you want to prioritize it, because, right, you could do, and it also depends on the school's capabilities. So say the school, I don't know the status of the school district and what kind of funding they have and the capabilities they have, but say they have the money but they can't run a project to do a $500,000 driveway. Well, that's something the city might be able to run the project if the school ponies up most of the funding. So it does really depend on the conversation with the district. And then it also kind of depends on what as a city, kind of away from the school's operations, what our priority is. If something like a LED stop sign is something that we really think would be effective, and that's just buying a stop sign connecting it to electricity. Like, that's not a big capital project. You know what I mean? And in terms of messing up grant funding, it's not that much, you know what I mean? That's something you could do right now and wait 3 years and get a grant for something else, and that $10,000 is going to be pretty, you know, small potatoes, so it's not a big deal that you did it already. You know, so there's a lot of different ways to prioritize these projects.
I think it's really critical, how do we look at what they've included in the project? I honestly don't think that we can do this without looking at Bruce, and I keep on coming back to the same thing, but I don't think it's a viable solution. How do you go back and say, hey, guys, you need to add Bruce and San, or maybe, and/or San Benito? To me, that's critical.
I don't think we're gonna pay for a new study.
Well, we're not going to pay for it, but did the city say anything? Gee, Bruce isn't there. It's like, oh, ho hum, let's not worry about it. And not you, but
Right. It's my understanding that the city was more given this at the end. There was very little involvement. That is why in the staff report that I put other school-related improvements not included in the project, because this Bruce is very important, and I agree. Frankly, I think my professional opinion, it needs a sidewalk, but that's not something that's in the school's interest, and that isn't something that would end up in their report, but that's a project that we would do and we can include in a larger project.
I'm sorry, why wouldn't you say it was in the school's interest?
Apparently they didn't think it was in their interest. I don't know why.
Why would that
It looks like their walking maps that they provided identified other preferable routes.
So can we ask the Dave's Avenue representative to the group to ask why it wasn't in their interest?
We're welcome to ask them that.
I don't know if they'll be able to.
No, it's you, right?
Because
No, I mean, it's
I don't know why this particular one, though,
yeah.
was mapped out like that. I wasn't in the mapping.
Well, and I wonder, did they do studies? I mean, did they see who was coming to school and where they were coming from? Or
Yes,
did,
there are
they
heat
did.
maps in there.
They had heat maps. They did the tallies of where kids were coming from, and the numbers stood out in the corners in different locations.
the
Yeah.
head counts.
Yeah. And we do ped counts and car counts, particularly car counts we've done, of which entrance the cars are coming into. So we stood out and we did who's coming into the Poppy side and who's coming in from the Dave side into the main entrance.
And how did they get into Poppy? They get into Poppy from Bruce, right?
From Poppy.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
unless
No, but then there are times where the cars cross over and people who come in from Poppy go to the
Yeah,
Dave,
like
the main.
Vista's in. I mean, our house is in front of Vista. Okay, I've stared at Vista for 21 years, and Vista's on this route. And if I look at Vista, it's closer to the school. I think it was more of a proximity thing. But anyway, that was.
The retrospective here, I don't know. We wouldn't have the I don't know who to ask for the historical context about how the lanes were changed. I can certainly try to find out.
I guess my fundamental question is, how can you have a safe routes to school at Dave's Avenue without considering Bruce? To me, and ignoring that, I think is crazy. I really believe that.
Well, maybe there's an opportunity because I know that there's a route here for me that doesn't feel that safe for my children to walk on. And it's certainly, I think there's opportunities for safe routes to improve, and that feedback is absolutely, I think would absolutely be taken into consideration. So, and letting Karen know and contacting the safe routes at the district. No. I think but I think what you're saying, going back to Bruce and Poppy, that there are some things in here we can do, and then what Jessica was saying, there's certain things that you would even recommend that need to be included. Again, the whole Dave's corridor. So maybe it's figuring out. Karen, I would say email Karen and Karen Briones.
Who I don't even know who Karen is.
So she's the executive.
She's the
District office lady who Nicole was saying she called. So she would be a great person to reach out to find out the historical. Why was this route selected? If we want to learn more, and then Jessica, what can we do?
I guess I'd really like the city to have asked David Collins on Bruce, that has lived with this for the last 20-something years, rather than going to Karen. Karen's important, but the folks have watched the cars go down from the day I moved into that neighborhood, they've been complaining about that. Okay, but we're keep on going back to the school district, which is important. So let's chalk with Karen, but Dave Collins needs to be asked, the Hoax need to be asked, the folks that watch those cars zoom by every day need to be asked. Watch them dodge the potholes and, the water and everything else. And that also needs to be coordinated with our prioritization on the pavement management. What do you do first? What do you not do first? Poppy was done, Bruce was not done. My understanding, Bruce wasn't done because we're going to do this change. My understanding that Bruce wasn't done because we wanted to include it in this project, but Bruce isn't on this project, so to me, this seems all discombobulated. That's why I'm frustrated.
Yes. So I think we have to figure out how do we start to take action? And so that's my question, is just how can we, what can we do?
I mean, I keep thinking the same. I'm an outsider. I don't live in the Luscetta School District, so I don't know firsthand about any of this. And I'm not going to go stand in front of the school every day and figure it out. So I want to talk to people that are looking at this every day.
Yeah.
And I think the Safe Routes to School people, they're going to have answers. I mean, they're going to have good ideas. That's a starting point. And so that's how I'd like to approach it.
So we could almost get feedback about each of these solutions and then other hot spots.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going
from
to pick one of
both
these.
groups.
Yeah.
There's no way I would even vote for.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, I live there and I don't, you're right. I don't know. I have the gut, but
So
I don't know.
They have looked at this. I will say the school has looked at this, and they certainly have a perspective. And I don't know if it's a unified perspective, but I think it's one that we absolutely should workshop with them around. And again, not all of us then sit down and say this one, then take it to the community and say, okay, here's what the safe routes, this is one engineering study that was done. You live here. What is your experience? What is your evidence, your data telling you about what's important? And so that should be the next step. And that way we make sure that we're not just including and what's happening in the driveway.
I mean, you ask someone like myself, I'm analytical as heck. I've had all sorts of math courses, but I don't have data. But what I do know is I've gone out in the middle of the road and I've slowed down Hummer 2s 15 years ago that were gunning their cars and heading towards the school. But can I say that that's analytic? And it just, so it's more than data. I know we need to be objective, but we can't. I'm not going to be able to do a $20,000 data report to prove these guys wrong. I'm not going to do that. I just know intuitively that there's issues there. So it's more than just looking at the engineering reports. I'm not against engineers at all. I've worked with them all my life. There's more to it than that.
The report was about circulation. I think it was about slow traffic. So I doubt that they looked at anything to do with fast traffic. That wasn't going to be something that they addressed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the guy that pushed to have that sidewalk on Poppy when I moved there. That was a major effort, but we did it. That was when Aaron Garner was mayor. It was the big deal then was it would remove the bucolic nature of the city if we put a sidewalk in. It was like, who cares if it's bucolic if the kid gets killed, and it was the smart thing to do, and that sidewalk's really well used.
Well, I think you included in the report some things that are recommended from your side. So this isn't just the static safe routes to school. The beginning report has some narrative from you that's really helpful, which talks about the pavement management project. So I think there's a vision for this being something not just related to the school. And it sounds like maybe we can, in order to move ourselves forward, say our next step would really be to set up a workshop with the school-facing folks, with the principal and their safety and safe routes group. And then after that meeting, have set up another workshop with the community members who live on Bruce and the surrounding streets.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd love to know what the Dave's people think. They might have some wonderful insight for us too about the person who lives right next to the crosswalk.
Oh, absolutely. And the person who's going to have the flashing LED sign in front of their house. I mean, I don't.
So I think that making sure that, if our number 4 priority is to also engage Los Gatos, the design of our commission really should also be to engage our design is to engage our community members too.
I think that's part of our
mission, so then the step is to engage community members and then come back together and to kind of share what we've learned. through those workshop sessions.
Jessica, I got a question. This is historical. There was a lot of conflict between the school district and the city when they remodeled the school, how many years ago it was. And one of the areas of conflict was, and I'm just speaking into just generally, had to do with traffic flow, because basically the design of the school was controlled by Sacramento architects. But the city, and I know that the city management at the time and the school, they wanted it this way, the city, and there was a compromise. Is there any, just in general, could that be a source of wisdom, possibly? Is there an archive of something that when they went through the remodel where the city said, gee, it would have been better to have designed it this way versus that way? I'm just thinking out loud, because I know that was a bone of contention when they remodeled the school.
I can look into that.
I just a general point.
Seems like you're a lot better off looking at what's happening now than what people were imagining.
Well, it wasn't an imagining.
A long time
It
ago.
wasn't an issue of imagining. It was an issue of our city engineers expressing how they think the traffic flow could be. There was investment made. There was input made. There was, some sort of there was some friction going on. I don't know how much of it was instituted, how much of it wasn't. But I'm just saying there might be some
Well,
knowledge.
if there was an actual study then.
No, there was a lot of discussion when that was a major remodel when that school happened. Just an idea. Maybe it's a worthless whole, but just an idea.
Well, there's some teachers who are still there who lived through the remodel, so it would be who are part of the safety group too, who might be able to provide some context as well. So a good reason to meet with them too.
Megan, do you know, it's kind of on a sidebar, has there ever been any talk, like the city owns that little piece of strip on Winchester,
Oh, I know it.
no, this side of Dave's?
Yes.
Yeah, Dave's Avenue. Anyway, they own this little plot of land. And when I walk, I used to walk with a girlfriend early in the morning, there were, past whatever that little court there, there's all these, I think they're Hillbrook parents, that all line up there. They all sit and wait with their kids, and then I don't know if a bus comes by or some parent with a big car, and they all get in there and they go. Has there ever been any talk about putting an off-site place where on a major street, so it'd probably be Winchester, where parents could just drive by, drop off their kids with an adult, some responsible paid adult who would hopefully show up on the day, that would walk them then up to, kind of caravan them up to school just to get some of that traffic out of there in the first place?
Not to my knowledge has there been that. That has definitely been my dream.
Yeah. Because why would you want to have to go through
Because I've
that?
stopped going through the drive-through line, and I've started dropping off. I carpool with 4 kids from the Rinconada neighborhood in my minivan, and I drop them off at, Cavan, or right the next one up from Cavan in Dave's, and then the kids walk because there's a protected stop sign and a sidewalk.
So you can feel safe.
So then I feel safe because then they're not trying to dart across. I think Cavan is the one without the stop sign, actually. And
It's
so,
not in this point.
yeah, and I'm indifferent because I found the stop sign the next street up, and they get exercise and they are ready for school, a little bit more clear-headed. But there hasn't been a concerted conversation like that, but that would be, I think that's something within the realm of Safe Routes to School to try to coordinate that. And there's some great things that, with time and more volunteers, we could certainly apps for carpooling.
I could rent out my driveway. In the morning.
I just think
Yeah,
all these solutions are, changing. It's still, there's going to be that many cars.
Yeah,
there,
it's
it's like, how do you
we start to change the culture
take some of
by
this
doing-
pressure
yeah.
off, and
Yeah.
some of it is educating kids, but if you don't feel that you can put your kid on a bike or that you
Yeah.
can let them walk because it's not
Yeah.
safe, so we can, kind of address some of that, but you're still going to have so many of those.
There's still a bottleneck, even when I'm thinking about like Dave's, I drop off and the main thoroughfare is Dave's, and coming back through to Dave's, and everybody takes a left on Winchester to head off to work.
Every school has something.
Yes,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Is your sense the walking has gone down in the last? I see a lot of. I love watching the kids in front of our house, but to me it seems like it's pretty well, at least down the Poppy across from the. Seems pretty well walked to me. Maybe I haven't analytically counted people, but do you think it's gone down? And people are driving more, or?
I've been there for. Hard for me to tell.
Okay, just curious.
I just know that there's a strong number of kids who walk from from down Poppy, from Andrews Rose.
Sure.
And that there's a heavy walking contingency. And I've asked people who live along Dave's further up kind of why, and I think there's just a fear of not having some sidewalk components and fast drivers. Carpool, sometimes we send the kids from the rink. But there's Eaton, the hill to compete with.
Believe it or not, that 15 years ago, there used to be a family that used to unicycle down Poppy every morning. It was like a circus, but they were great.
But I think that takes into, I mean, we also have, if you look at the heat map, and when they did the study, there are like 300 plus families who live on that side of Highway 9. And so no matter what, those folks are most likely going to drive.
Well,
Unless we have a
no,
carpool
there's
and
actually
walk.
some that cross, you
That
know,
cross, did they-
yeah, and we had that man killed at the crosswalk too.
And so I heard
yeah.
from parents who said they're really hesitant about.
It's dangerous.
doing
It's
that.
really dangerous to cross it.
Is that part of does that fit in with the Highway 9
Yes.
angle?
Plus Gaddis.
No, as far as the crosswalk goes, I
Yeah,
know.
but so what we're
Yeah.
talking about,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely
that
part of
one's-
Highway 9,
Yeah.
although
It's
all
bad.
Los Gatos, I guess.
But again, that would be a great one to get partnership. Understand, because I know that they are trying to, there was conversation, at least in what I read, that they're.
Do you know what percentage of the kids are Los Gatos residents at Dave's? Are most of them? How much help could we get from Los Gatos?
That's
Is
an
kind of what's in the
interesting
back of my
thought.
mind.
I don't know that one. That's a good.
Well, and they're much bigger, so I imagine we're not.
I was also told that the population has gone down some as the property prices in that neighborhood are higher, so that the kindergarten's actually shrunk, but another demographic change. You're talking about the crosswalks, I brought it up before, is that, again, I don't know if it's cost effective, but if you go to Saratoga, if you go into Saratoga, they actually have those flashing LED lights in the crosswalk. I always thought those would be pretty neat in the
We
street.
have them actually on Masal, and they took them out. Yeah, they found, but they have better ones now.
In
And-
in street ones,
yeah,
right?
we have on Masal. They also have one that they use in Canada a lot. That's a beam of light that shoots down, so it comes from up. Yeah, they have different things.
Install a little arm that goes down. It's
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Wouldn't that be nice, like a
because-
railroad crossing?
Yeah, like a railroad crossing. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
Because it's not, I mean, again, as a parent who's come out of that driveway, it's sometimes not that you're not paying attention, it's that it's a really funky kind of, it's just a peculiar, when you have lots of kids who are waiting and then parents who are also still moving, walking, it's hard to tell who's stopping. And if there's even the crossing guard, they're trained as crossing guards, not traffic controllers.
It's almost like you need cops out
And
there.
yeah, it's like this funny nuance between a crossing guard and a traffic controller, because if there was somebody who could time the exiting, then the flow would be just a little bit better. Otherwise, the crossing guard comes out and is like, oh, one child, sure. Oh, you're coming too? I'll just wait.
Yeah,
Keep on
yeah.
running. That little arm, I'm like, man, that would keep.
One more comment on Dave's, and I don't know if it's legal or not, but I thought the presentation from the church was excellent. Is there anything that we should do about that in the short term, since we're on the subject of Dave's? I mean, that to me is unconscionable, that the school doesn't go out and check the number of crossing guards and they get on the phone. Someone needs, that's a checklist thing in the morning to me and in the afternoon. Just thinking out loud.
Well, yeah, somebody from the school should be there to make sure the crossing guard is there, right?
Well, yeah, it's basic management to me.
Be backup.
I am very curious about where the ownership for the crossing guard lies, because I've asked for multiple years about the crossing guards, and I'm not sure. It's always been, well, you should talk to these folks, and it sounds like it's some kind of joint partnership. And so, is that something that we can ask you to find out who?
Yeah, the thing.
Is responsible for ultimately responsible.
Yeah,
for
the thing is,
crossing
there's the
guards?
legal answer, which you can have the lawyers, but there's also like the woman that I mean, I don't know what the legal answer is, but she owns those kids and she wants to make sure they're safe. And you want to find the person at the school that has the same attitude. Well, if you look at this, we're not really responsible. You want to have someone that really, like Susan Von Felton when she was principal. I guarantee that would never happen.
Well, and
She didn't care what it said. She would go out and make sure the crossing guard
So
was there.
what is the backup plan, for them when the crossing guard doesn't show up? That's what I would like to know, okay? Okay, something's gonna happen sometime, whether it's this guy that never shows
And
up.
what triggers it? Someone's got to trigger it, and I think
Right, and who knows? Who knows to say, let's
it's
go?
got to be more than the good heart
Yeah.
of the church. Yeah.
It seems like a Safe Route to School or some other parental organization would be closer to that issue than us. And
Oh, absolutely, but I'd like to spur it on.
Yeah. Well, I think knowing who to contact, because the Safe Routes to School, it's still like, well, we were told to reach out. Like, how do we work in supporting if we're still not clear about who do we talk to about Who's in
Who
charge?
owns
Because we're
this?
not in
Yeah.
charge. Do we just sign ourselves up for like, all right,
I'm crossing guard today.
yeah,
What's
I'm
my
crossing guard.
training?
If he shows up, if he doesn't, then
You don't want it to come down to some kid getting run over, and
Yeah.
then the lawyers go at it to say who's liable, and that,
Well,
don't wanna
and-
you just gotta own it like she did. She owned it emotionally, and that's what
Right,
you
and
wanna
where are the
find,
extra stop signs if they don't have it? And where's the vest? And,
Yeah.
where's, if somebody has to step
So
in.
is there anything we can do about that before June? I just, to me, that sounded that was really good. It was disturbing input, but it was really valuable input.
Somebody should volunteer to go talk to the principal. Somebody that lives in the neighborhood.
Well, I live there, but I'm not,
I mean, I am happy to.
I'll be glad to, but I think it would probably be better coming off.
It sounds like the issue's been raised, but nobody's done
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
about it. Yeah.
I don't even live in the school district, I'm not gonna do it.
Oh, I don't mind doing it. I just, someone that might be part of the school district, whatever.
I mean, I will absolutely tell her and share again. Like you said, I don't know what else they're aware, and
Well,
as we go to the district and maybe have a conversation with.
I would just say, hey, look, is there a procedure on the part of the school to verify, just like an MBA business program? Does someone responsible in the school for checking? I'm not talking about legal responsibility. Go let the lawyers handle that. Is someone say, hey, this crossing guard isn't there, and what happens? Who's responsible for doing that? And whether you're legally responsible or not, don't you have a moral responsibility to make sure that happens? Some conversation like
Might
that.
be interesting for Safe Routes to School to, once we find out who owns
Yeah.
them, to say, go to the different schools or to do a survey and say, hey, we're having some issues at one of the schools with crossing guards
Yeah.
not showing up and maybe they're not getting
Yeah.
replaced.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? Do you have that issue and what are you doing about? What's your
Yeah.
backup plan? Because if you
Yeah.
find out Blossom Hill, the principal goes out there or, these teachers go out there, then how are they doing it and not worrying about the liability and dates?
I'd let the principal figure that out and just hold them responsible, but that's my approach.
But I would think Safe Routes to School might be the
That-
people to kind of do a little survey with the schools and say, what are you having this issue and what are you doing about it?
So I know we're kind of deep in this conversation, but it's not agendized, so we should
Oh,
probably,
got
if we want to talk any further on it, put it on the next agenda.
Okay.
So can we not take action on it?
Not on the crosswalk issue, no.
So we'll let the kid die until June, or what?
Somebody could take it into their hands personally.
Yeah, you were all private citizens.
Okay.
But we gotta follow the law.
Yeah.
Save the kid first, sorry. Throw me off the commission.
Okay. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. So.
Thanks for reining us in.
So, we've discussed Dave's next steps. How do we work? What's the next? I just want to get clear. How do we workshop? So, is that something that we set a date at the next meeting? How does that process work? So, start to kind of get that stuff set up.
So it'll be an action item for me to set that up
Okay.
from this meeting,
Got it.
and
Okay.
discuss with the school and see what their availability is. And if it's after our next meeting that they'll be able to put something together, we can agendize it and talk about it again. But if it's before then, we just have to notice it.
Okay.
So do you think we
Wonderful. Thank you.
should we be thinking about before summer break, or are we talking about September? I mean, just conceptually, you're closer to school than I am.
I think ideally before summer break, because they need to plan if there are any kind of things that they would want to consider over the summer. I know they postponed doing some things last year to their parking lot because of some of the things that the
Okay.
report said, because they want to do stuff.
Right.
So I think doing that would be helpful, and so that they can plan, because they're doing all their planning for next year now.
No, and when the time comes, we should also conceptualize who would be the best party or organization to facilitate that. I don't.
I will leave that to, I don't know how workshops in the public sphere work.
I will work with the city manager and I will let you know.
Excellent. Okay. Wonderful. For a great discussion. Thank you on this one. So then we'll move on to the city engineer's report.
Oh, that was the thing I asked about, but I should have waited.
Yep,
Okay.
there we go, here it is.
So, just a few quick items about, and I already brought this up with earlier discussions, but a pavement management program is going to be awarded tentatively to JJ Albanese Incorporated. and hopefully really getting all of the pavement done here before the end of the fiscal year. So that's exciting to get a lot of that work done early on in the summer. And then also, as I mentioned before, the neighborhood improvement project design contract is also going to city council next week. So I did get a response from the fire district about their speed humps and speed tables and their priority routes where I will read what they sent to me. So
Will this be included in the minutes? So
yes, I can put this as an attachment in the minutes. Please see the list of streets below where the fire district cannot support the installation of speed-reducing infrastructure.
But not?
Would not.
Okay.
The list was developed with analysis of emergency responses throughout the city of Monte Sereno using GIS apparatus tracking data. All speed-reducing infrastructure installations should be directed to the district for approval, as the list below is subject to change as traffic patterns evolve. And then he attached the standard that was given to you when they attended the meeting. So the list is Dave's Avenue, Oakhurst Drive, Rose Avenue, Eaton Lane, Reedwood Road and Lane, Vineland Avenue, and Ridgecrest Avenue.
So Bruce and Poppy are not included.
Correct.
Interesting.
That's all I have for my engineering report.
Why would they select something like Eaton? I'm just curious.
As a
I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just curious the logic of it.
good access off Winchester,
It's great. Yeah, it's a.
Going where, though?
spreading out into the neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is.
I mean, I know the street. I just was
Yeah.
curious.
Wide too.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
go slow. There's a speed bump.
Yes, you're probably right. It's access to that part of the
Yeah.
town.
And those will be included. We'll be able to, I'm trying to
Yes.
attach it.
So what does that say? If our trustee engineer from Monte Sereno says that we want to put this, whatever, be bulbuses out or bumps or whatever, if they did them on Poppy or Bruce, they wouldn't as be involved as they would if we did it on Dave's. Is that what it's
Correct.
saying?
Yes. That we would not get an immediate protest from them.
Okay, well, it could be delayed, but it wouldn't be as high a priority.
Correct.
Okay. And the reason, just to reiterate again why I brought this up, is that the neighbors were under the impression on Bruce, they complained about the speed a lot, either right or wrong, was that they couldn't do it on Bruce because it was one of these road stuff to Dave. So I'm glad I asked the question because it turns out not to be true. Now, that was based on valid input or not, I don't know, but that gives us more flexibility. That gives us more flexibility with the solution for the Dave's Avenue neighborhood, whatever that may be.
Have they done speed studies on Bruce?
I don't know. I don't need to see the data. I just see the cars, right? You can be analytic, but especially with the potholes and stuff. But
Well, and Bruce, could be traffic calming with sidewalks and stuff put
well,
on there
what
too.
you know,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what the
Yeah.
solution is, but it's good to know that that's not covered.
But you should be aware the community outreach police officer has looked at speeds in that area and talked to us about it. And if we felt concerned about something, I'd be willing to bet he would do more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they would. He was a good
But
guy.
the other thing I'm thinking, and I forgot about it, and I haven't seen it for a long time, is we own one of the speed trailers. One is supposed to be dedicated, those radar feedback trailers? And it's supposed to be dedicated to Monte Sereno and being moved around where we need it. And that, I don't think
know
I've
that.
ever seen it on Bruce.
They
I don't-
might have. I don't know.
I mean, it used to be on Highway 9 very frequently. And that used to be triggered by, well, you need to call us and tell
Yeah,
us.
just the residents calling to
Yeah.
say.
But I direct you to check into that, and if
Yeah,
it's still there, and
I don't know exactly about the ownership, but I know I just recently had them put out the speed trailer on Palos Verdes, and it was pretty immediate that I requested it, and he had it out there like 2 days later.
do we have the one that gives feedback too on, they can hook it up, right, so they can actually.
Yeah, it
find
collects data.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So that might be
That would be really interesting.
helpful on Bruce.
I think it comes down to design, though. I mean, in the longer run, whether it be sidewalks or stop signs with bumps out or humps or I don't know. That's for suggestion, but I think it's good to know that. It's really valuable input. Thank you.
So I think we can adjourn the meeting. Everybody's in favor? Do we have to vote?
Nope.
I just said.
Take control.
9:08, we are done.